It's Aya Wallace here, hosting, moderating Are You on Stage's Torn, week 5. So I will not introduce the panel, but we're gonna do it in the fashion that we usually do for Torn. I want everyone to introduce themselves. And when you introduce yourselves, let us know who you are, how you contribute to our theater community here locally, because I have noticed that not only do we have new people that are to our local theater community, but then we also have people that are watching that are not local. So this is live and it stays on the page and people are sharing and it's getting out there and the word is getting out. So we do want people to know who you are. A lot of us may know who you are, but we want everyone to know who you are. So introduce yourself with your name, but then also introduce yourself with how you identify yourself. I'll start with Miss Wanda. And yeah, I'm from the South. So
I got you.
I can't call you. I can't. There's just no possible way. So
I understand that, baby. I understand. So I'm from the South too. So all of you are baby, sugar, honey, and darling. I'm grandma. So I'm everybody's grandma. My name is Wanda LaJoyce Holly. I have been doing theater in this area, which is home, for the last at least 55 years. It's more, but we won't go into that. I do. I have done shows at most of the area theaters. I've been to all of them. I taught theater, started the magnet program at Endo High School. I taught theater at Shaw University for 10 years. I'm still there, not teaching. I'm in student affairs, but my heart is in theater. So that's why I'm everybody's grandma.
And how do you identify yourself?
You mean she, her?
So yes, you could say that, or you could say, for example, I consider myself African American.
Oh, okay. I consider myself African American with Native American sensibilities. I'm multicultural in that I promote that everywhere. I've been the director of that in many of my professions or many of the schools that I have taught in. So it's multi.
Great. And so we'll continue with Joe. How are you doing, Joe?
Not bad.
Good.
Not bad. Better every day.
Yes.
So I'm Joe Lee, Joanna, whatever. It's fine. I'm a musician and a music director in the area. I think we got here in, Andrea, help me out. 2014. Here. She's on the other side of the screen. I was like, you have to be here for this. And I identify as gay and Asian. It's tricky because like ethnically I'm Chinese, but my family's from Taiwan and there's that whole conflict there. But if I say Taiwanese, a lot of people just think Thai. So just to keep it simple, I'm like, I'm Asian.
Thank you. And Miss Yvonne?
Hey, thanks, Aya, for asking me to do this. And I'm Yvonne Anderson, and I am a teacher, and I'm also a director and producer in the area. And I work primarily at NRACT, North Raleigh Arts and Creative Theater. And I identify as an Italian American. So I'm second generation. My grandparents came over in the 1920s from Italy.
Awesome. Thank you. And Miss Tina?
So my name is Tina Morris Anderson, and I am a performer slash actor slash director and supporter of the arts. And let's see, what else can I say? Mother of theater people as well.
Yes.
And one's over here, if you see me look that way, because he's messing with me. So also, and I identify as I'm Black. And my family tree has lots of limbs, and according to Ancestry DNA, they'll go across to Europe and other places farther away. So there we go.
Yeah, when I switched between African American and Black American. We had discussed that in the first panel because a lot of times I'll say African American, but like just in the back of my mind, Miss Wanda, I'll be like, but wait a second, your great grandfather is white. You've got some Indian people around you.
Exactly.
So it's just like, okay, yeah.
But even as Black African Americans, whatever we are, I have been at least 7 or 8 different names of what I am. So starting with the N-word, colored, Black, African American, Afro-American, all of that. So
you've been Negro.
Oh, I forgot that one. When I called my son that, he said, "Ma, you called me the N-word." I said, "No, I didn't."
No,
But
I didn't.
Yeah.
So when you talk about that, so going through all of those titles, and you're one person throughout the years, how did that affect and impact who you are as a person?
Well, I'm sort of an independent person, have always been, and Tina knows Oxford very well. Her father was my principal when I was in middle school. I babysat Tina. They lived down the street from me. My mother taught at the high school. The drugstore, or 5-10 cent store, I guess, had a water fountain in the back that had pristine water, ice water. It was cold. Well, I wasn't conscious. Yes, I was. Anyway, I drank from that water fountain, and the guy that was in the store said, "Gal, can't you read?" And I'm 6th grade, and yes, of course I can read. He said, "Well, why are you drinking out of the white water fountain? Why are you not drinking out of that one?" And I go, "I'm not colored." The long arm of Maggie Holly reached from wherever she was in the store, grabbed me on my shoulder, and pulled me out of that store. That was my first, and I was 6th grade. So I'm 70 years old. So you know how long ago that was. That was my first indication that, oh, you know you're different, right? So then I made it my purpose in life to integrate everything I could. I said, I will be whatever you want me to be to show you. So you want me to fit this mold? You want me to fit that one? I'm Black. I'm a woman. I'm a vet. I'm a whatever else you want me to be. I'm going to be that and show you I'm the best for whatever I'm here for. So it's been a long journey, but it's been an interesting journey, and one that I can teach all of this to my students, and I have for years. And they're like, "They really used to do that?" And I just realized when all of the Black Lives Matter, all of that came to the forefront, I just realized that my mother couldn't vote. My mother, who taught school, master's degree from Columbia University, could
Mhm.
not vote. And it, it wasn't in my forefront until this.
Mhm.
That I was she got the vote shortly before I was born. So, it really it sticks to you exactly what is going on that you're not really paying attention to. I went to Garner Consolidated High School. I decided that I wanted to integrate Broughton. I was in the third integrated class in Broughton High School. Then one of my teachers said, "Why don't you go to ECU? You're a good actor. You're a good speaker." That was before the stroke. So, um, I said, "Okay." So then I was the first Black theater major at ECU.
Wow.
Um, yeah. So yeah, it's
Mhm.
been a journey.
A
And
journey.
then I told you guys when I came back into doing theater after my son grew up, I'm like, where where did all these Black people come from in theater in Raleigh? What in the world? Yes, yes. I am still amazed at where we have come right here in my hometown.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's amazing. Uh, so I kudos to the theater world in North
Mm.
Carolina.
Awesome. And we're going to talk more about that too. Um, and I appreciate that story, knowing that I love that I'm going to be the best.
Hmm. Hmm.
Whatever you call me, I'm going to be the best.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, we were talking about the different titles that we have. Joe, like I know that you had mentioned, just in identifying who you are, there was like an explanation that had to come with it, right?
Hmm.
It was just like, okay. And I literally was like, okay, Taiwanese. Okay. So wait, okay. So go into more depth about who you are and what that is and the combinations, because some people may not understand.
Sure. Can I ask a quick question though?
Yeah, we ask questions.
Sure.
If anybody has to ask questions, I'm just sitting here on my
And you know this because we work together at Scottsboro Boys, but it's a genuine question of like, what does it say on your birth certificate as your
yeah.
for every
Hmm.
year?
Hmm.
Like, Ao, what does it say on your, if we could just go around?
Oh, you know what? I don't even know. I would have to look at my birth certificate because I have no idea. I have no idea what it says. Like everybody, does anybody else know?
No,
Chances. Go get mine from. It's in the
Actually, I
drawer.
have
Yeah,
it
I
right
was
here.
like, where is my birth certificate? I just had it out not too long ago, so now I'm trying to figure where I live.
I'm gonna guess that mine probably says Negro.
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna guess mine says Caucasian. Right.
Swan is looking for hers.
She has her Sandy.
Yeah, Noah's gonna get mine. He actually is gonna get mine. So.
Go get it.
I was like, Ao, you should text your mom.
I I would do that. I don't know. And I want to scream downstairs and be like, hey mom, but we're on live. But now I'm worried because I'm like, I don't know where I laid because I just had it. But yeah. What about you, Joe?
So I'm yellow.
Hmm.
My birth certificate lists me as yellow.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And
And where were you born?
when was I born?
Where?
Where? Texas.
Texas.
Yeah. Then everyone's like, oh, right. Okay. That makes sense.
But what year, Joe? What year was that?
83.
In 83. Oh, wow.
83?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I know. So then the shock comes back in, but then you're like, oh, but Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then explain, that culture and why you would have been
Wow.
labeled or named as yellow. And
I
then
mean,
your
Not
background
even
too.
on mine.
yeah. So I mean,
Racist.
I didn't, I wasn't born in a major city. Well, I mean, I guess. So I was born in Beaumont, and raised in Beaumont. So, it's not Houston, it's not Dallas Fort Worth, it's not Austin. But it's 80 miles east of Houston or so. The culture was such that when I was like, I think a year or so before I was born, the school district still had not integrated. They had defied integration for so long until finally the federal government stepped in, like in 82, maybe.
Oh,
And
this sounds familiar. This sounds like really familiar, Texas. But go ahead.
and said, you have to integrate. Dissolved the previous school district and then set up Beaumont Independent School District. So then when I was growing up, my parents went to the like school administration district and like every year and had to pull a ping pong ball. And that had a number on it. And that was the school that you were going to that year because of trying to force integration in a place that, had defied it for so long. So I grew up in, as neither white nor black, sort of in the middle of a race war culture in Southeast Texas, which was not, I'm trying to find the best way to say this. I mean, of course, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. But looking back, I'm like, you learn a lot. I guess you just learn a lot from it when you're in the middle of it. Like, there's no way you can say that we are in a post-race. Like, there's no way I would have ever believed that, just because it was such a critical part of my childhood. And I mean, like, I was 7 in 1990. You know what I mean? So like it was such a critical part of my growing up, and that was through the 90s.
And you're still experiencing.
Yeah.
It's heavy, and it's still around you heavy.
Yeah. And so there weren't a lot of Asians, like, which is fine. I sort of have given my parents a lot of hell for it. Like, why did you move here of all places? I haven't really gotten over it, but at least I'm not. But I haven't, I don't bring it up every single time I talk to them anymore. But yeah, I mean, it was just hard. It was tough to survive and then get through. And for the longest time, it was like, if I get out of Beaumont, it'll be better. I went to Baylor for undergrad. It was not better.
What?
And then when I went to Cleveland for grad school. And then finally I was like, oh, no, it is better. It is better. So when Andrea first was like, we're moving to North Carolina, I was like, I'm not going back south. That's not happening.
Yeah. And again, that's something we're going to talk about, or hopefully I can bring back up later on, because that was one of the questions that I had. So for Miss Tina and Miss Yvonne, tell us your experiences, or those first moments that you felt or knew that you were different in any form. That one experience, that moment.
Tina, do you want to go? I'll go. Yeah, my experience is not race related.
Mhm.
It's more, I grew up in Western Pennsylvania in a coal mining town. And I guess um, the f- eh, the first time I knew I was different was when I had this love of the arts, I guess. And that sounds kind of corny, but there were, and like when I wanted to go to college and my parents wanted me to go to college because back in the late 70s when I was graduating from high school, um, there was a lot of, you could go into the coal mine, you can go into the steel mill, you could do all of those things and make a great living at the time. And so going to college seemed like you thought you were better than everyone else.
Mm.
And I grew up and I used to say yawns and I still have my Pittsburgh accent, but I think I don't have it anymore, but I still have it. And sometimes when I would even go home and my mom would say to me, "Stop lip whacking,"
Mhm.
was just a way for her to say I was trying to sound smart,
Mhm.
or too smart, even though they valued my intelligence and they valued my education. But there was, this idea of when you're around the family, let's just try to get back that Pittsburgh accent and fit in more. So that's my story.
Be like
That
Rome.
that experience is also the African American experience,
Mm.
the education, and you go back home or you go around your friends that are not, and it's well, my generation, not now maybe, but it was like, oh, you think you're better than us? You talk better than us? You think you're above us? And it's also in family. The fam in the black family, the less educated members of the family are intimidated by the ones who are educated. And it's never talked about unless it just happens to come up in a conversation
Yeah.
and you go, "What? You felt how? What are you talking about?" And then you talk about it. And it's like, "Oh my God," which is the same as the light skinned black and the darker skinned black. It's just like what she was talking. Yeah.
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 Miss
Yeah, I
Tina?
see it with my students too, in
Mhm.
school. Like, I teach advanced placement classes,
Mhm.
and my African American students in the advanced placement classes, they go through a lot of, um, they get a lot of flack,
Mm-hmm.
from
Yeah.
some of their African American peers because of them being in those classes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was in what was considered academically gifted classes, and I it was more difficult in elementary school, but as time went on, I think I was in a class of people that we were able to somehow, I would say, cross the lines of between the educational levels. Um, and I went to two schools that were considered, I guess, like gifted and talented. So even though we were in our academic classes that were separated, we were then around everyone else that um,
Mhm.
in like our elective courses, and that just allowed for the community, the Black and or the Black community as a whole in that setting to say, oh, you are the same. Oh, you do like the same artist, or you
Right.
still can understand what I'm talking about when I say certain things, and it's not different. But it was a struggle. It was like you had to prove yourself. You had to prove that you were down, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
No?
So sorry. Distracted by the sun. I'm trying to help you out. He's still looking for my birth certificate. I should have gone and gotten it myself. So I could have been back by now. So in terms of different, Wanda talked about it. I, was born here in North Carolina, but we moved from Oxford when I was 6. And so pretty much my life in Oxford, it was all Black people. And not until I was much older did I realize that I lived in a segregated society in Oxford. So for example, for me, I thought that I sat with my sisters up in the balcony of the theater, the movie theater, because that's just where the cool teenagers sat. That's all I knew, not realizing we sat in the balcony because that's where we had to sit. So in a way, I was a little bit shielded, I guess you would say, from things. I have a recollection of, as a small child, I don't know what grocery store it was, Wanda, but I had to go to the bathroom. And I remember my sister taking me outside in the weeds beside the building. She was mad because I was like, hurry. But again, realizing the reason why my sister took me outside was because we couldn't use the bathroom that was inside. But again, these didn't really occur to me until later on. And so when I started school in first grade, my class was actually, integration had started. So it was like half Black, half white students. But by the time I got to 5th grade, white flight had taken place. And so the city public schools were primarily Black. So, but even then I was always aware of my heritage and all, mainly because I had a sister who's like maybe 1 year off from Wanda's age, who was all into Black power and that kind of thing. So there was never any doubt who I was, we'll put it that way, but was never really confronted by it probably till high school, because in high school I went to a private school. So you could pretty much, there were like maybe 5 of us in the class of 50. So, put it that way. But there was a big area, where people would come into the school, a big kind of a lounge place. And I remember one of my friends and I, we were sitting on a sofa one day. And so she was being silly, and she's still white, and so she was sitting on the sofa, and as people would walk through to try to get where they were going, she would hold her foot out because her shoelace was untied, and she'd go, tie my shoe, being silly, here, tie my shoe. People would look at her going, hey, you're crazy, you're not gonna tie your shoe. But actually then this one girl was walking by, and she stopped, and she said, no, I'm not Black. And now Susie, my friend, was just, her jaw dropped, because she and I went, I'm sorry. So then our questions changed. As people started walking through the lounge, we would stop and go, excuse me, do you see me sitting here? And they go, yeah. Oh, we're just checking. So that was really the first encounter I had. And granted, a good number of the kids at the school were rich kids and all that kind of thing, but still that. And then going from there on to go to Duke for college, and being, walking into a meeting and then students going, may I help you? As opposed to, hi, you obviously are supposed to be here at this meeting. So, we talked about, going to Duke, and we used to say, yeah, that's fine. Affirmative action might have gotten me into Duke, but it didn't keep me at Duke. So just because it opened the door, we had to be on our own to really stay there. So, so that's when you really, and in my mind, I interpreted it more as ignorance, because these are kids who obviously haven't been around Black people, and so they don't know any better. And because these weren't just kids from the South, these were kids from New Jersey. They always talk about Duke being like, New Jersey, but still, but they were coming from all these other places. And so, even to this day, just based on a person's expression and what they're saying, I can kind of go, yeah, you haven't been around Black people that much, have you? The other story I'll just share, I was sharing the other day. So, I have gotten my undergraduate degree, 2 master's degrees, working for First Citizens Bank, sitting in a lovely, well-appointed corporate office and interviewing students for Duke now, which means I've graduated. Yeah. And so this young white woman, blonde hair, I still remember to this day. And I'm sitting behind my lovely corporate desk now because it's a power thing. And so, but she's sitting on the other side of it. So we're interviewing. And I kid you not, at one point she said, and you speak so well too. Yeah. And to this day, I'm not sure what my brain did to protect her, but it did. And no, I did not recommend her for admissions to Duke, but I had to think about it. And I thought, wait a minute. One of the things she shared with me was she had gone on a missions trip to Africa. And I thought, oh, I get it. The only Black people you've been exposed to have been people who are on the mission field. And for some bizarre reason, you thought it was okay to tell this Black woman, I speak well. And, you know, yeah. Of course, I was younger then. I was in probably my 30s. Now, we have a different conversation. But, you know, but again, it just goes back to still, you know, even that, depending on a person's life perspective and life experience, doesn't matter. They're going to see what they see. They see what they know. And so there we go.
Yeah. So talking about that, seeing what people are going to see, what they see. No, I come in the room, whatever you know, or whatever you feel about me, that's what you're going to base me on. How has everyone's experience in your early life affected, and when your younger years, has affected or impacted you in the theater world? And anyone can take it.
That's a hard question.
So what I realized as a child, because I was very quiet, you may laugh, but I was very quiet. And
this is a truthful panel.
I tried to. I always wait. You know, Wanda knew him as a baby. Was not a quiet baby wanted. So, you know, but I was quiet and I was shy and was not, for whatever reason, wasn't out playing a lot. I had friends, but what I realized I would do, my oldest sister was a speech and theater major when she went to UNCG. And so after she graduated, there were still books of plays and all of that in her room. And I used to go upstairs and get her plays and actually grab my various toys and dolls and everything and act out her plays there in my room. So I actually recorded some changing voices and stuff. Anyhow, you know, again, never even thinking that later on, I mean, I didn't major in theater in college, you know, I didn't really do anything theatrical in high school. So it's real interesting to go from that and to see what I do now, which is like, whoa.
I remember that my early, childhood and my first performance was 5th grade, but I'm a singer. I wasn't really an actor at that time, and really later on, I was a singer. I always got everything with my voice, with singing. Um, Even after I majored in theater at ECU, my uncle asked me one day. He said, "Well, what are you gonna do? Play maids the rest of your life?" And I'm like, "What?" But yeah, that was in the 60s, um, before I mean my first year in school, and it never I never thought about it because I always thought that I was just gonna sing. I never did a play until I was in my 20s. I taught theater. I loved it, but I always did musicals and always did The Best Friend or, the Finian's Rainbows and all of that stuff. Um, I never got to even star in a musical. Mm, I sang the Stars songs, but I didn't. I wasn't the star of the musical. But that was fine with me actually because it didn't bother me. I was still doing what I love to do. Now I started teaching at Enloe in 1979, and I had a student that came into my class love me to death to this day. But she started touching my hair, the back of my head. And I'm like, what are you doing? She said, I'm looking for the horns. I said, excuse me, the what? She said, my mom said that black people had horns in their head. And I said, touch it again. And she did. I said, do you feel any horns? No, ma'am. Has your mother lied to you before? Yes, ma'am. I said, okay. What else did she tell me? I'm not going to go through the other stuff her mother told her.
Mhm.
She say boyfriend was black after that. But before that, he would not have been. Um, but I'm like, this is 1979. Who tells a child that now? But then, we're in 2020,
Mhm.
and who does the things or says the things that people are saying now?
Mhm.
I'm like, we go forward 10 spaces and go back six. Go forward 10 more spaces and go back five. Um, when I was younger and we traveled a lot, my family, I had family in New York and in Michigan, and we drove everywhere. I didn't know at the time that that's all we could do was drive everywhere. We had, when you pack all the lunches in the car and you're having a good time, and it was great. I didn't realize until later that we couldn't stop and eat anywhere. That's why we packed the lunches. We couldn't stop anywhere. And I'm like, well, damn. um, so when I talk to students at Shaw about that now, they're like, what? What? How old are you again? And, because they're thinking 10 years ago, we did
Mhm.
well, one of my students was in Freedom Song, the movie, and it was about the freedom riders. And so we would do workshops in my classes and teach the kids how to respond to the sugar being poured on them, the
Mhm.
spitting and all that. And their response in this was 80, 89. No, this was 96. Their response was, I wouldn't have taken that. I would have slapped them back. I said, and you would have been another dead nigger. That's all. And
Mhm.
that's what they would say. You're just another dead nigger. And it's the generation thing. I couldn't go to the March on Washington because my mother was scared she would lose her job.
Mhm.
So when you go through all of that and then you see the stuff that's still happening in 2020,
Mhm.
like my marches with Martin Luther King were futile, but not really. They were, but they weren't. My marches in New York with uh okay, senior moment. But they seemed like they were for nothing. So when my reaction to the violence of the marches now was like, why are y'all tearing up people's stuff? Because nobody is really going to listen to the quiet marches anymore.
Mhm.
Nobody is going to respond to the peaceful demonstrations anymore. In fact, you can peacefully demonstrate and somebody can come out of their house with an assault rifle. So,
Mhm.
you know, you we have to do something to make this work. And I
Yeah.
think theater and the arts are the best thing going for that. I taught at Martin Luther King High School in New York City, segregated. I had one white student, and y'all might know who it is, Michael Rockefeller. He's an actor now on in movies and things. He was my only white student. We did West Side Story, Black and Puerto Rican, and the principal was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" We we all talked about race relations before rehearsal, and the kids were like, "You eat that? I eat that too. I didn't know y'all did that. Yeah, we do that too." And the lady that was talking before about it's more things alike than different, but you don't know that until you talk to somebody.
Yeah.
You'll never find that out until we have conversation.
Mhm. And
So
so,
all of that affected my theater life later
mhm.
on. Yeah.
Anyone else? Joe. So, like, I've had some of these conversations with Joe already. So that's why I'm calling her out.
Sure, sure. Um, and there are a couple of things. So I realized I never answered your question, by the way, about Asian identification.
Okay. Yeah, you can definitely.
I was like, oh crap, I sort of veered. um, super quick. Like the reason I hesitated and like backtracked and then did all that. I mean, partly because my dad now is on this tear about like, you know, when he filled out his census form, he was like, make sure you fill out that we're Taiwanese. Like, we're not Chinese, we're Taiwanese. We're because China and Taiwan have been in a civil war for a while. Right? Like, China wants to claim Taiwan. Taiwan has been trying to sort of hold its independence with the help of the US, and all of that. COVID then became a thing of like, Taiwanese people being like, hey, we didn't do this.
We didn't. We're not.
Right? Even though, like, technically, like, Taiwan does not have UN status and has not since the 80s, I think. You know, does not have recognition by foreign embassies except for like a very few exceptions. That kind of a thing. So there's this whole like, my own family is split between people like my parents who are pretty anti-China and like pro-Taiwan independence, and then I guess more pragmatic family members who are like, China's huge, we're gonna lose, so we just have to figure out how to live with it and make that work, you know. Anyway, and then there's the awareness in the US that, and I touched on it a little bit, that if I just say Asian, it covers a lot of bases, even if it shouldn't, right? Because like throwing Asian on a, I mean, it's like, what do we have anyway? It's like, what do we have in common? But except for how we're viewed, but whatever. Yeah, that just sort of covers that, and then I don't have to get into explaining like Taiwan's political status, because I would suspect that your average American neither knows nor particularly cares about Taiwan's political status. Yeah. All that to say, I do. So I was, I think you hear this all the time, I'm a classically trained musician. Classically trained musician. I went to school for organ. But I remember in high school, as I'm like, you know, practicing at church at night, having this realization that I was like, I'm essentially, for me, going into quote unquote foreign studies. Because like, this is not my culture, right? Like, I'm spending a lot of time with Bach and it's fantastic, but I'm also like, this is not my culture. This is not my heritage. In a way, this Christian heritage is not mine either. Like, my parents converted, but in terms of tracing back in the family, this is not, you know, this is not what my ancestors believed. So I really had a moment where I was like, okay, I'm essentially going into foreign studies. as a classical musician. Went through, had my struggles, you know, although just sort of trying to figure out what am I doing here and what am I trying to say with music that's not mine. Because I think at first you start out being like technical proficiency, right? Like I just have to get good. I just have to like play these things. And then you start thinking about, as you grow as an artist, like what am I really trying to say? And like what part of me is in this? And then you sort of realize, like, at least for me, I was like, well, I'm not really in this. I love it. I love playing it, but it's not, you know, my identity. Because every time I would go back to Taiwan to go hang out with family, and that was where the real divide showed up. Not anyone in my family cares at all what I do. Not a single one of them cares about, and which is totally fair and valid because it is essentially, you know, like foreign studies. And like well, not ancient, but like foreign studies and historical and history. So then I somehow like, you know, moved into opera a little bit just because of social circles. And then from there crossed on over into musical theater and had the same sort of thing. Like, you know, I'm playing all these shows and I am learning a lot of styles because like when you're a classically trained musician in a very conventional sense, you don't grow up, you don't learn a lot of different styles unless you, I mean, I didn't, I shouldn't say. Other classical musicians maybe did a much better job. But for me personally, like I did not do a great job of listening to other things. I didn't listen to pop music, all of that. So, so then I'm thrown to musical theater and I'm like, none of this is familiar. It doesn't matter if it's Once on This Island or The Wiz, where I'm totally out of my comfort zone, or even Fiddler on the Roof, where like, yes, I can read all the notes on the page, but I'm like, this is not also part of my identity. So I was like, oh, I'm an outsider in every show I'm looking at. In a way, it's nice in that I'm neutral because everything is outside of like, you know, me. But then the flip side of that is I'm still like, and maybe, you know, for me, it might not be important, but I'm sort of like, where is the part where my identity and my work actually intersect? Which right now I don't have any work, so like there's no intersection to worry about.
There's no intersection at all. We're all sitting there at the highway like, oh, okay.
You know, but there is that like, you know, sort of just because I had a weird pathway into theater. And actually the weirdest thing in a way for me is like, I got into theater because I weirdly wanted to work for Cirque. I was like getting my organ degrees and I was like, I don't know, you know, if I want to be a full-time church musician. There are a lot of issues there. But like Cirque seems like a cool gig. Maybe I want to work with Cirque, like Du Soleil. And then I looked up resumes of music directors on Cirque. And I was like, oh my God, they all have like Broadway credits or national tour credits. So then the obvious answer is I somehow have to get into theater and then like work my way up and then work for the which, you know, I didn't have a lot of guidance in terms of career, but you know.
I think we're all kind of fumbling through that even now.
Right? It's like, oh, yeah.
So as a student, so we have like educators here. I want everyone to understand that and just from this panel, we have an idea that we have several educators on this panel. Even I was about to call you Sister Tina. Even Miss Tina, she I know that you also work with a program, and I'll let you talk about that if you'd like. I won't name it. I'll let you do that. But if you want, also works with a program with students to showcase their skills and abilities. Joe said something I've never heard before. Like I've never made that connection of like, oh, I'm going into a place that's not my culture. It has nothing to do with my identity or what I consider my identity. So it's foreign. We've talked a lot about, students or even actors being in a place where they are not put into certain roles and positions, even crew, because that's not attached to them just because of the color of their skin or how they look. How did everyone else respond? I guess Yvonne, I'll go with you too.
Okay.
How did you respond to hearing, Joe say it was like a foreign class, even though it's not, it's a organ, it's a, it's
Right.
full trained, this is the class, but in her mind, that's a foreign studies is the word that was used.
Yeah.
And so you have students in your class, what was your thought process? And were you thinking about, your students also and what that looks like?
Yeah. I've never heard it put that way, and I would have never thought of that, was Joe's experience. But now as she says it, and I think about all the musical theater I know that she's music directed, yeah, I get where she's coming from. For my students, it's funny that you asked me this question, because today I was looking at my syllabus.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I got a lot of old dead white guys are on that syllabus. and that obviously has to change. And so my AP partner and I, we've really tried to think about more. I guess let me backtrack. So I guess the thing that's become most apparent to me is that I've always thought I was anti-racist. I have an open, welcoming classroom. I accept all my students, but I'm really kind of stupid about a lot of stuff, if I'm perfectly honest. And one of the things I started thinking about a couple of years ago was teaching Huck Finn. And I decided to stop teaching it because I thought, if you were an African American student sitting in my class, the African American literature we were reading, other than Their Eyes Are Watching God, or not African American literature, but the portrayal of African Americans in the literature we were reading, was basically narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, which is the story of his, escape out of slavery, which is an inspiring, wonderful, beautifully written story. And then Jim in Huck Finn, and so I don't know what turned that light bulb on finally, but I've stopped teaching. I don't teach that book anymore. We're going to teach more culturally responsive, to use the phrase, but more culturally responsive literature. And that year that I had that epiphany, I guess, I had a student in my class whose mom was a professor of African American studies. And so she gave me a great list, that I pulled from, but now I'm like talking around in circles. I forgot my original point, but
oh, that's fine. We're learning.
But I guess the point I'm trying to say is what Joe is saying to me, or what Joe has just said, and what I've been thinking about a lot recently, has made me realize that I have a lot to learn, and that it's important to listen and to hear the stories. Wanda's stories are really powerful to hear.
Miss Tina, would you like to talk about the program that I'm not just to plug, but
No,
yeah.
that's fine. Because you may be a judge one day.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe. So the NAACP has a program that's called that's ACTSO. Of course, I'm supposed to know what it all stands for, but it's Afro Cultural technological scientific Olympiad. I
Olympic.
think that's what the act so stands for. But it's basically an opportunity to encourage students of African descent in areas of STEM, the performing arts, the humanities, as well as, let's see, the visual arts as well. And so it culminates in a competition where the students compete, and then those who receive gold medals because of their score then go on to compete at the national level. And at the national level, if they are a medalist, they receive different kinds of awards. Sometimes there may be a scholarship attached, sometimes there's not. So that's the program that Aya is referring to. But one of the things that came to mind for me when Joe was talking was there's a flip side to all of this for us, and something that I realized in particular was reminded of it when we did Cinderella, for example, that when you look out into our audiences, one of the reasons why, you know, there's a disconnect is because children of color, and in this case, we're not just talking about Black children, we're talking about Latin children, you know, et cetera, just do not have that opportunity to sit in a theater and see live theater. And so that's why if you bring in a group of children, because I think, so we did one performance, you know, I got them to donate tickets so that a group of kids could come who are actually affiliated with a local shelter. And yeah, there was crunching. Yeah, there was talking, because again, these children did not know. Now, if you bring them to the theater enough, they'll learn, okay, don't crunch, don't throw the paper, yeah, that kind of thing. But so that's actually what I was reminded of. Yeah, that's what I was reminded of, just because, you know, exposure and children, and not even just children of color, but children of certain socioeconomic, you know, means. But that is how we begin to bridge the gaps that we have by actually enabling children to have that experience. So,
Tina, I just want to jump in on that, you know, children of certain economic means. If it wasn't for my choir teacher or my band teacher in high school, taking us down to up to Pittsburgh to see musicals, and, you know, to go to Heinz Hall, and I think Jesus Christ Superstar was the very first thing I saw. Or when I was in wind ensemble and played with a college wind ensemble, and we toured, and, you know, all those opportunities gave a little girl from a coal mining town a chance to really see what the world was, you know, just that opened that door to all that creativity and everything that had always been inside of me. But had it not been for someone giving me that opportunity, you know, I don't know where, if I would be in this whole theater game, and maybe it would be a good thing, but I don't know.
So, I put this group together. Well, I didn't put you all together, but I wanted us to have like a mixture of in my family, what we call like our, and please don't like take this the wrong way, but like our elders, and then like Joe and I, you know, are like the younger generation. And I wanted us to have a conversation.
like that young.
I'm like, you're on your own for this. You're on your own.
So, and then I even wrote down here, I was like, how do I even say that? I do not want to, like, somebody was like, well, say seasoned. And I was like, no, they're not seasoned. Yeah, they're not seasoned. And then so I was like, well, veterans. And I was like, well, they're still like very active in the theater community. So I can't call them veterans either, but I do want to get just a glimpse as to locally here, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, local theater. What was that climate like then in comparison to to what we are experiencing now. And when I say now, I pre COVID and pre 2020. Just say that, pre 2020. Comparing what was the climate like then? What did you experience anything then locally? And compare that to what we are now, pre 2020. Remember, pre 2020, because we're now starting to change. Well, we're now starting to talk about changing and working through the climate that we're in now.
As far as what we experienced in the theater earlier
Yes.
than, say, the 90s.
Yes. So like, I know that like,
I am an elder.
yes. Well, I know that you performed, I believe you performed at RLT. So, but then I did not know that you did Pippin.
Yes.
Like, what? When they told like, here it is now, and this is what it was before. And I was like, Miss Wanda, she was Pippin. Pippin, what the world? So that I want our audience, I want people to know like what the climate was then. When you were doing Pippin then, how do you compare that climate to when you were doing Blood Done Sign My Name in that same space?
It's good you asked that, actually, because I would never in a million years have thought that RLT would do the kind of work they're doing now. Back then, Theater in the Park was the avant-garde theater, the one where people of color could go and not do the roles, could do more roles there than any place. These other theaters weren't here. The theaters that are here now, they weren't here. It was Theater in the Park, RLT, Barn Dinner Theater. RLT was very, very rigid. We called it the Blue Haired Ladies Theater. So when I did Pippin back in the 80s, I think it was. First of all, a woman did the leading player for the first time. Newell Tarrant didn't want to hear all that stuff. He didn't care. He wanted the person that could sing the role, dance the role, do it to do it. I applaud him for that. But there were roles at RLT as far back as the 60s for African Americans, but it wasn't like it was pushed out there. Oh, we have African Americans performing in our theater, or we have Black people on our stage. It just kind of happened. It didn't happen often, but it did happen. Now you could go to Theater in the Park, and if you could sing, you were in every show. I did Aldonza in Man of La Mancha at Theater in the Park, although we did it in the Rose Garden at RLT. But I also did Once on This Island, where I played Tina's mother the first time RLT did the show. But I could not play Nancy in Oliver, and I could not play Grace in Annie. But I could sing the songs along with the star. I sang every song with her, with them, except as long as he needs me. But that's how it was, and it was like, we know how it is. We it, we're not gonna fight this battle. There were other battles to fight, and that was not one of them. You're in the show, you're featured, you're good. It's all good. And now RLT is doing Blood Doesn't Sign My Name. And it's a piece that fosters the conversation because of the nature of the show. They're doing uh, letters from the home front that talk about PTSD in war times and the people that come back from war. And I am vet. I'm a Vietnam era vet. Was not in Vietnam, but I'm a Vietnam era vet. And those theater pieces are what starts now the conversation. Because we had talkbacks on both of those shows. And it was an education for the people who came to see the show as much as it was for the people in the show. Um, Blood Done Sign My Name. I was in college. I was at East Carolina in North Carolina, but you know where our focus was? Kent State. I didn't know anything about the killings in Oxford, North Carolina, where I used to live. I didn't know anything about it until the show. So, um, but I can tell you about Kent State. So it's a I think the theater growth in Raleigh um, has has been the catalyst for relationships, discussion, and as I call it, the talk. Um, I didn't know Joanna until tonight, but I understand what you all of what you said. I understand that. My background is gospel. It was not musical theater. Yeah, I sang, but I sang everything gospel. So when you had music to learn for a show, it was a foreign language to me. But now in this growth pattern that we force ourselves to do, I sing country, I sing opera, I sing gospel, I sing whatever is put in front of me to sing and enjoy it. And it has become who I am, the eclectic who I am. So that's who you are. You're all of that that has made you who you are today. No matter what uh, genre it comes from, no matter if it was classically trained, because if you weren't classically trained, you couldn't pick up the rest of it. And I got that when you all remember All in the Family, how Edith Bunker was such a horrible singer in the opening song. Well, one of my directors told me she can only be a horrible singer like that because she can actually really sing. I went, she's a singer? I didn't know that because she was so bad in that opening number that she did so well badly. But because she was trained, she could she could veer from that and do it the wrong way. I just think that the arts teach us so much, and they teach each generation a little bit more. And Raleigh has shown that it has grown to be a little bit more, a lot more, because I know Aya and the young people that I met when I came back into theater, um, after being out of it for well, till my son grew up. I'm like, it was so refreshing to see all the cultures working together in shows, and it didn't matter anymore. It didn't matter anymore that no, you have to be blonde and thin and to do this role. That doesn't matter anymore from what I see. Sometimes it does. uh, you know, you can't you can't. I I would love to play Maggie. I would love to play Laura's mom, and but I can't because the playwright did not and does not allow it. But barring that, Raleigh has come so far with allowing the best person for the role to do it, and the audience doesn't mind that. The audiences don't mind that, and that's from my perspective, but which may be skewed, but that's what I see.
Miss Tina?
So, yes, Wanda play. It was back when I could actually pass for being 19. But anyway, yeah. Uh, but I was fortunate again, coming into RLT to eventually experience colorblind casting, with Haskell casting me and Me and My Girl, such that you wouldn't have expected it to have been um, a Black actress playing the role, but Haskell didn't care. It's like Wanda was saying, he cast the person that he just thought would be good at it. So I basically had a British accent, but still, I considered that to be fortunate to be colorblind casting. What I have seen change is, for a while, there might have just been that occasional theatrical production, whether it was a play, more likely a play as opposed to a musical, that was written primarily for a cast of color. And so those were hard to come by in terms of theaters being brave enough to do that. I know sometimes the explanation was, well, we don't have enough actors or actresses to do it. Now, though, it almost seems like the reverse is true. I can speak from a director's point of view in terms of, because not only is it that our main theaters are doing productions that are diverse, but now we have more theater companies that are coming about because people said, well, they don't do enough of this kind of play. So we're going to start a theater company that does this kind of play. So I actually found myself at one point directing a play that required diversity, and it was hard, Ed, because you were busy, that required, actresses, and it was hard to have people available to come audition for it because they were already booked for other musicals or on hold waiting to find out about something like that. And so you have that type of a challenge. But then too, I think it was an interesting challenge that we had even, recently when we were trying to cast Fences, again, because there were so many actual productions that were taking place, there weren't actors available. And because community theater is community theater and does not necessarily pay its actors, it's hard then to get actors from Durham or Chapel Hill who are willing to make that drive over and over again to because it just costs money, gas going back and forth, back and forth. You know, for me personally, one of the reasons I haven't really auditioned for anything at Playmakers, because the thought of going back and forth to Chapel Hill is like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Even though it pays, but it's still a lot, you know, especially being a person who has a job and does, you know, and does theater. So, but that's, I guess that's the big change that I see now. There is just a pull, a demand for actors of color, but it's sometimes it's just still, even with that, hard to fill roles. So
Yvonne, Harrison.
I was thinking about, you know, my experience here has been mainly with Interact since, you know, Mike helped found it. And I was thinking about, you know, what we're getting towards 20 years. And back in the early days, we weren't doing anything that was even remotely where we were casting African American actors. They weren't coming out. Maybe one or two people over the early years. But then I think when Tim Locklear came in, things started to change quite a bit. And you know, I was just looking back at the history of some past seasons, and I think we are doing more diverse theater there, and we're, you know, we are providing more opportunities. I mean, I don't even know how long ago it was, maybe 10, 12 years ago, I directed The Miracle Worker. And we had no people of color come out for The Miracle Worker. And I did something that I cast a white girl in the role for an African American actress. And, you know, in retrospect, that probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but that's what I ended up doing. And now I think we've done totally a 180 in that regard. But, you know, last fall I was trying to do a multicultural cast for 12 Angry Jurors. And it was really hard to get people to come out for that particular show, because I think, you know, the reputation of the movie, you know, it's a white cast. I mean, there is one person of color in the cast, but so I was able to do mixed genders, but I wasn't able to mix race as much as I would have liked in that.
So how do we find solutions? And Joe, I'm, you know, pulling you back in. How do we find solutions to, and we've asked this question several times, and so I'm going to ask you all, because you may have a different insight. How do we get people to come to auditions, and how do we encourage people to come out and be a part of what people are trying to change? How do we do that? What are our solutions? Come on, Joe.
I don't, you know, like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I think, I mean, and that was something, there are multiple problems, I think, or multiple issues that are all on top of each other. In a strange way, what I was saying to AO, I don't know, weeks ago, I don't know, I've known since the time, was that I feel like COVID has put, strangely, some power back into actors. Power that actors did not necessarily have before. And that is part of what is fueling some of the change. Is that actors are speaking out, whereas I think before, because there's this threat of like, oh my God, if I speak out, I'm never gonna work. That has been removed because like no one's working, you know? So it's kind of a, what are you gonna do? You can't take away something that's not there. So I don't want that to go away when COVID allows things to, how we've handled, I don't know. Whenever things return to not normal, I don't want that to go away necessarily, because I do think it's important. Part of it too, and I've talked about this a lot, so I'm sorry if I'm boring people, but you know, as a classical musician, there's never a point where you're like, I have to be in one city to be considered successful. There's only one city where this art is being created and supported. And I don't know why that's the case in theater, because I didn't, I mean, I don't know, but it is sort of a bizarre model to me. And one that puts everyone who's not in New York at a disadvantage, right? So you think, one of the problems is just about really connecting locally on all levels of theater, not just community. Really connecting locally. And then, and part of that too, then, is financially finding a way to make it possible for local actors to come work for you. Because time is a problem. And especially, just in the 6 years that I've been here, when I was driving down to Fayetteville to work at CFRT, when I first got here, it was like 85 minutes, and now, I mean, I just remember driving back one night at like 1 a.m, stuck in traffic on I-40 because it was under construction. It took me like 3 hours to get home, being like, there's not enough time in the world to do this job. Like, they're just, and so it's like having ways to make it easier for people to do this for a living. If you open up that access, which really comes down to money, then we have a better shot at fixing some of the problems. But it is, it is a, I mean, we can talk about access, and we can talk about diversity. But if we don't put money behind it to back it up, we're just going to run into the same problem, I think, when things, quote unquote, return to not normal. And that's a scary thing, because like, no one in theater, or at least I, don't want to think about money. I mean, that's a whole different, like, it's a scary thing to think about, because you're like, how is this going to work?
Anybody else response to that conversation? Yvonne?
I'm trying to think how I want to say.
Okay, because I see it like
you see it percolating in my
Yeah.
head, right? Like I definitely hear what you're saying, Joe, about the money. Yeah, when money is there, and people are not only valued for their work, but they're paid for their work, I think that will definitely open up doors. Unfortunately, having been on the board side of an arts organization, I just know that's a big challenge. For many years we were, thinking, what could we do to just put butts in the seat to keep the door open? And, of course, now we got grant money, but now that's being, threatened. And,
yeah.
The first thing to go is the arts. And so, yeah, I definitely agree with you 100%. I just find it a shame that the arts are so important to life and they're so undervalued. Wanda was talking about how that's the way the conversations can get started, and that's the way we can teach kids, about differences in society. Or Tina was talking about how we can expose people to the arts, and it's unfortunate though it all comes down to money in a lot of ways. But you know, even though that's important, even though money does drive so much, it is important, I think, and I guess this is just my teacher self, to find opportunities where we can give kids who've never been to the theater, who've never had a chance to audition for a play, or, you know, to give them opportunities and to bring it into underserved communities in the arts, you know, underserved arts communities,
Mhm.
you know, places where, you know, I'm on the board of directors of the advisory board of the Findlay YMCA, and we have a great program called Camp High Hopes. You guys, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but Julia Fair, who's a singer and actor in the area, she brings theater there. Her Right on Cue Kids Camp is there, and it's amazing, you know, that these kids have never had a chance to be in a play, and that's part of their camp experience, and what it does for them and how it impacts them when they go to school and when they're, you know, moving up in high school, and how, you know, the arts just change their outlook on a lot of things.
Mhm. How do we like take that experience, that exposure, um, and that drive and that seed in the heart? How do we take that and like make sure that it continues, that we're keeping the interest, and that they can cross over to even the local theaters, the community theaters rather? What's a solution, or what's an idea or a thought where we can make sure that once I've had an opportunity to go to this program, High Hopes, once I've was a part of the program that bought tickets to see a regional show, and I want to do that, how do we pull and keep that interest to our community theaters and to our regional theaters that we have now? Thoughts and ideas about that?
I think one way to address that is to do more of bringing the theater out of the building into the communities, because not every person is going to have the ability to or has the transportation even to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And even if the opportunity's there, the kids may not be able to get to the theater to see it. You know, school, like right now, is going to be impacted greatly. You know, will schools be able to travel and bring their kids to lunchtime shows and that kind of thing? And I think what goes along with that too is for theaters being as obvious as it might seem to them, to be explicit in saying all races, genders, nationalities, what have you, are welcome to this audition. Because we may often make an assumption based on what we've seen of that Broadway show or what have you. So case in point, when they did Bright Star last year for Theater Fest, I was not planning to audition for it, just because, well, Bright Star is an all-white cast. There you go. Until someone said, no, look, the director wants a diverse cast. Go do it. So other than that, wouldn't even have thought about it. But because somehow the word got out that no, they want to see a diversity of people come to do these roles. So just being intentional about getting that message out, even if you have to say it over and over again, for people to realize that anyone can come and participate and audition for community theater. But I think with that is also doing more to bring theater out into the community. People understand what it is. So.
Joe, yeah.
This is not, so this sort of came up, like, you know, at a friend post the, basically asked the question, like, there is a certain amount of bias in the way that auditions are set up, in the expectations of what you are supposed to bring into an audition, right? Like the music needs to be a certain way. The like put in a binder. But like, sorry, but like,
All right, everyone, when you go to Joe's audition,
That's Joe's thing. Bring it in a binder.
we will provide binders. If you need a binder, we will provide binders.
well, and that's part of it is I'm like, I think there can be more of an effort because I know theaters do hold audition workshops, but often they are for a fee or often they're for a cost. And I know, oh my God, all the theaters I work for are going to be like, Joe, why are you saying this? But I'm like, offer them for nothing. I'll do it. I mean, and Ann knows this right now. I am teaching a ton right now for free. Because A, what else am I going to do? Like, and B, I right now have this, and you know, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to live, but I'll figure that out later. I'm like, we are in a position where I don't feel like I can squeeze blood from a stone. That's the thing I keep saying. I can't squeeze blood from a stone. Everyone's in the same boat. We're all screwed. I can't sit there and then charge. And what am I charging for? Information? Like that doesn't feel right to me. I don't hold it against anyone who's like, no, I really like have to make a living. Of course. But like for me, I'm like this kind of information, audition info. I'll donate an audition workshop, make it free for the community. Better than that, offer like, hey, here's a 16-bar cut. It's a page. So what if everyone has the same cut? If we're learning, at least if we're learning together, like I don't know, I'm not going to be upset if 20 people in a row come in with the same cut if that is what we learned. You know what I mean? So like we can teach that, we can perfect it, we can put in a binder for them, we can mark it the way it needs to be marked, and then at least they have a solid like this is all the extra stuff I have to do to get a role other than just perform, right? Because I do think that it's sort of like back in I don't know how the SAT works anymore, but back in the day when we had to take the SAT, there's a part that was like information, and then there's a part that was like literally how do you take this test? And I'm like, the literally how do you take this test, that should be accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
I also think the information should be accessible for everyone, which is why, you know, it's like, if you can afford to put the information out there for free, then do it. Because you know, it will help the community as a whole, because it will grant people access who maybe haven't had access before or have seen that as a block to, you know, because you don't want to be the one person who's like, I've never been to an audition before. I have no idea what to do. And I can't afford I'm just going to make them a number because I have no idea. I can't afford the $25 for this random class for a show that I don't even know I'm going to be part of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And actually, Joe, you reminded me of something that Wanda was saying. Depending on what somebody's preferred genre has been over the course of their life, especially when we're talking about people whose grounding is pretty much church, and in particular gospel, then there is a good chance then that you're also talking about someone who does not read music. Completely intelligent individual, just has never learned to read music. And so then that sometimes is a barrier as well to people when they are approaching a musical theater audition or something like that. So, you know, there's always that question of how do you address that? So.
And I mean, yeah, no, that, and it's an interesting thing because like, okay, so I had to step in for a performance of Crowns and I totally bombed. Like I was like, I should not be doing this. I cannot do this. I actually cannot. I cannot step in and do the show. There's nothing written down. They're like, you're a church organist. And I was like, Episcopalian. Like, you know, there's a whole, you know, but then they're like, well, there's no one else. And I was like, oh my God, okay. And I mean, the cast was so kind. I was so indebted because I think it was just fear and me staring at them and me being like, I don't know what to do. You have to help me out. By that same thing, it's like, I understand the fear of walking into a genre that you don't know. I absolutely understand that. I mean, it was like, you know, the first time I did a rock show, the first time I did The Wiz, the first time I did Once on the Side, the first time I did any musical theater show, because that's, you know, anyway. But then and that's why I'm like, the element of education, at least musical education, it's not even about like, sorry, I have a lot of thoughts going on in my head. I feel like in a community theater process, as a musical director, I have a little bit more time. So if you can't read music, it's not a problem. I would like to know so that I know how to talk to you, and I know what you need, and I know what kind of recordings to make, and I know who to pair you with. I will also obviously encourage you and try to teach you at least how to follow along, because I do think that's a valuable skill. Because it's not that reading music makes you a better musician. It's not that at all. I mean, because it's you know, like just reading music is not music, but it makes it easier for you to pick up whatever it is that you need to, so that you can do it faster, and that you can retain it quicker and without as many errors. I always talk about the roadmap, and I'm like, you know, if you can't follow the structure of how a song is put together, that's when it gets really tricky. So like, if you don't read music, you know, certain Sondheim musicals are going to be that much more challenging for you, because the musical structure is not as regular as you would expect. But I feel like in a community theater setting, because I have more time, in terms of not necessarily hours, because they tend to be shorter days, right? Like 2.5 hours, maybe 3. But it's like 6 weeks. Then I'm like, okay, if I get a person in a show, even one show, I think I can make a lot of progress with them. Multiple shows, then I'm like, I would hope that you can at least follow along on a score after 2 community theater shows with me. You know what I mean? I will terrify it into you. No, I'm just kidding. But where that changes, and I'll talk about my experience like with Norwegian, is I had a girl who, I mean, I love her. She's British. She does British pop really well. But the first show we had to do was like a circus show, and it's all oohs and ahs. There are no words, and she can't read, and she has to sing all this harmony. And she was crying every day. And at first I felt bad, and then I felt impatient, just because I was like, the reality of the way this corporate structure works is you have to get there. I have to hand them a product at the end of this period, or else the contract doesn't go, you know, and that's very different. Now, I got her there, right? And she was fantastic, but like, it's a different thing. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't want the inability to read music, or the lack of ability, I shouldn't say inability, the lack of ability to read music, to be something that's holding you back. But I think you have to have a somewhat realistic expectation of how much time then is this going to take me. You know, if I have to learn something that's totally outside of my comfort zone in a week for this contract, then maybe I should wait till, or maybe I should invest some time up front in learning whatever reading skill I need in order to land this contract, if that makes sense. But I personally view community theater as a great place for education. I know not all actors feel that way, and I imagine those actors are frustrated with me, because I'm sorry, like, I'm not going to stop pushing. But for me, I do view it as a fantastic opportunity to be like, okay, this is where you are. That's totally fine. Let's see if we can get you here. And the next time, let's see if we can get you here. And the next time you're in a professional show with me and you don't have time anymore. So I'm not going to, so now you just have to bring it.
Well, Joe, you know, what you're what you're talking about, I have experienced a lot of that from teaching and from being in community theater and professional theater. You have the students who say, "Oh, this is fun. I just love to do it, but I'm not going to go anywhere with it." And then you have to teach your audience in a high school that this is not the Apollo, and you can't talk back to them because they can hear you. So you really start from scratch, and then you get into community theater where you are have been in it a while, so you have been a professional, so whatever. But they are like, well, this is just community theater, God. You so so you don't even have the people who want to do a professional performance, and then you have the group in that same show that, why can't they get it together? God, we do professional work here. So then how do you bring all that, those three different groups together to want to do the same thing? I think it has to come from the organization and from the first meeting that all of us are in. I I think.
And I think even with this conversation, it being broadcast and people are watching, and people that have been in that situation where they're like, they may not come to an audition because of that lack of, understanding how to read music. Or, I'm kidding when I say this, but that I bring a binder. Or that when I walk into the room, like everybody else has like everything together. They're standing in line, they're waiting, they're good. And I'm like flipping through stuff, trying to figure out what I'm going to sing. Like I think people hearing what we're discussing will hopefully encourage people to step outside of that discomfort. And then also for community theaters and regional theaters, when it comes to education and outreach, able to hear these things and to provide opportunities, education opportunities, and resources in order to make sure that people, and particularly people of color, are supported that way. So that they're not just thinking, oh, kind of like the bootstraps thing. Like I just, I got to pick this up. I got to go to Walmart and get me a binder. I got to, do this, pick it up, let's go. But that there are the theaters that I want to perform for are there to also support me to get to that point, to that point where when I come to the audition, it's not, what I have physically, but what I'm bringing to the table for this performance. That's all you're going to look at. Because I think, and I think that with these conversations, a lot of artistic directors, executive directors are starting to have to think about how they cast, who's on their board, how you ask for money. Why are you asking for money? We've talked about this. Are you just asking me to be in this show because you've got to meet your quota? Like now people, it's out there. So now people are having to consider these things and think about these things and talks among themselves and talks amongst the community. So everything is just kind of out there on the table. And with that, I believe that it's our responsibility as artists, as leadership, that we take these thoughts and ideas and begin to develop and put into place the programs to make sure that things like Torn, these conversations are not just words and, 2 hours that we're spending on a Zoom call. So does anybody have anything else that they want to share?
Well, I'm just going to share that this conversation here about leveling the playing field for auditions has really given me some great ideas. And I think before I hold auditions for the next show I'm directing, that there will be an audition workshop, and there will be a way to alleviate some of the stress that people feel when they come in and they maybe have never auditioned for a show before. That will become part of the pre-audition process, I guess. Because really, like Joe says, what is it? It's just a sharing of information. It's a little bit of my time, or some time of some actors I can have come in and to do it. And if it brings people comfort and levels the playing field a little bit better, you might get a diamond in the rough that you never knew you were going to get for a show if you give that person a little bit of a leg up. So thank you for these comments. It's very important.
Great. Yes.
Can I jump on that super quick?
Yeah.
Before, because I don't want, oh God, I feel like I might have talked myself into a hole. I don't want other artists jumping on me being like, Joe, you're saying don't respect an artist's time. That's not, I'm saying, me personally, I'm willing to donate my time.
Right.
I am not saying that actors who are teaching audition workshops should not be paid. Like, I don't want that out there at all. But I do think this is a chance for donors. Granted, I know nothing about that world. No, I know nothing. But in my little idealized head, this is something that donors could say, you know what, I will underwrite the cost of this audition.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to get someone to donate to an organization. Yeah, good ideas.
Yeah. So I'm going to end our conversation, but with a question. And it's a personal question. With everything that has been 2020, with whatever 2020 has handed to you, especially dealing with COVID, and now we are, as someone said to me the other day, or I think I heard it on NPR, plug here, this is the only time I really would do something like this. So I'm an actress, right? I am NPR fanatic, right? So I've gotten my moderator skills from listening to NPR, especially 1A, excuse me, not A1, but 1A. That's an internal joke there too. But yes, so I got my stuff from a little bit from 1A, and then also The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. That's my little, there you go. But that's how I do this, guys. Putting my acting into use. But what I want to ask you at final question, personal question. You've got COVID. We have Black Lives Matter. We are dealing with so many other things. I personally am dealing with my own things. How are you feeling? How are you feeling? That's the question. Simple question. Personal, but with all that's going on, how are you feeling?
I'll start. I have good days, I have bad days. I'm trying to get a daughter married in October. And so there's all that stress. But I realize in having this conversation with you guys is that I really miss the theater. And I didn't realize that I really miss that time talking about theater, being with artists. And so this has made me feel better. So thank you.
Good. Miss Wanda?
I actually was talking about this today. I'm glad that I'm working from home. I'm glad that I get to go out sometimes to take the kids somewhere, but I still feel like I'm a prisoner in my own home. And I'm frustrated with that, although I know it's going to end at some point. That's the feeling I have right now. And this too shall pass. But I feel like that we all are frustrated because we feel like we are prisoners in our own homes, which does not make our homes very comfortable anymore. Um, and that's the sad part of all of everything that has transpired in 2020. And I agree. I am so happy for this conversation to talk to people who with like-minded people, and it was a very very enlightening and wonderful conversation tonight. And I thank you for inviting me.
Yes, definitely. Miss Tina?
So my in my non-theatrical life, I work in a hospital. So I've been going out and doing and interacting and all of that. So, and I'm grateful for that. Not having to wonder, gee, where's the paycheck going to come from? All of that. But what I also realized that's missing is that thing which balances out my regular life, which is either through singing or performing. So that I realize is missing. In fact, I was telling someone today that if you look at it from that if you say there's like a theatrical part of your brain or your theater part of you, that typically what happens is you finish a show, you do another role, and that role gets put away and you bring the new role in. Well, I've had a new role to bring in to replace the last one. So Yvonne, I'm trapped in Detroit. Okay.
And then like you're, yeah.
And it's Freedom Summer all over again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So right. So I'm kind of like, wait, I'm kind of still trapped where my character was when the show closed and oh my gosh, in the fall. So I'm looking forward to being able to replace her with something else. But I too appreciate this opportunity to at least look at the bigger picture, because this time is a time for reflection, not just about theater, but just about all the aspects of our lives. We can't help but do that. So, and we know that what is down the road, around the bend, over the horizon is a new normal. Things will never be the same way they were once before.
Right.
So, but oh my gosh, I'm about to turn chaplain here. But what stays constant though? Yeah, because I am. Yeah, but the thing that stays constant though is the fact that it was great. I got to see Joe. Hey, Joe. I got to see my friends. So, so I'm grateful for that. Oh, and Joe, if you ever do your workshop thing, I'll be happy to help to join you and do whatever you need for that one. But so that's it.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because in my head, I'm like, it didn't have to be like this. That is because, again, most of my family is in Taiwan. So there's a quick story. I'm gonna make it super quick, I promise. Which is that in January, my mom called me. Andrea and I had just gotten back from Mexico, so it had been like January 3rd or 4th. My parents were in Taiwan, and my mom was like, yeah, we're just kind of worried with this new virus that's out of Wuhan. And I said, because I'm an idiot, I said, don't worry, Ma, it can't possibly be worse than SARS. And now here we are.
Yeah.
And then in February or like late January, I was like, hey, Ma, I really want you to get out of Taiwan because you're really close to China. And now I'm starting to get nervous. So like, I want you to leave. It'll be better in the States. So then they came back to the States and now they're trapped. And then I was on the phone last week because my mom was like, how's surgery? And I was like, forget that. I need you to go back to Taiwan. And my mom was like, you're the reason we're here. I was like, oh, great, thanks. So that is frustrating to see like how it could have gone and then see where we are now. Like that is hard to take. But you know, I'm okay. Like on a personal level, I had surgery, which I mean, needed to happen. But you guys know me, I never would have taken the time before. So that's a good thing. I am like weirdly aware of how I am without any work, which has not happened in so long that it's bizarre. Like I'm making sourdough, I'm like obsessing over sourdough bread and the mint in my garden, and it's weird. But it's, you know, I'm sort of in a space of like, I'll just figure it out. I'll stick to sort of who I am in terms of principles and then just figure it out as we go. So I'm okay.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'll express a little bit. I was in a group yesterday for I guess like Black corporate people or people that work in corporate business or who are entrepreneurs. It was you know, a mix, but who are out in the work field. And one of the things that was discussed, my friend's sister, Salima Thomas, I'm going to shout her out because she shouts me out all the time, who does work with nonprofits. So look her up, Salima Thomas. But she talked about what roles that we have that we typically, you know, say that we are. And I'll always say that I'm an empath. And I think one of the things that has happened is through COVID, through the race war that we are dealing with right now, through all of the things that are happening with me personally too. As an empath, I was really excited that everybody else was starting to feel what an empath feels. And that is to always have like the burden of the other person on you. Not even the burden, because we don't, as empaths, we don't consider it a burden, but it is an underlying burden, but we enjoy carrying it. So it felt good that, you know what, I don't know if people notice on Facebook, but I'm like, yes, love, or, you know, if somebody's got some statement, I'm like, oh, share that. Yes, you're saying it. You are saying it. But I have kind of like stepped back because it's like, I need a moment. And then, like I said before, there's some things I shouldn't say because I just don't want the FBI at my door. So I'm still there. I'm still very much there. So that's where I am personally. But I just wanted to ask that question because I want the audience and people that are listening and watching to understand and know that we are all dealing with, you know, just life. And it is good for us, even dealing with our own things, to come together and to, in this platform, talk about race and talk about how we can change and talk about how we can make a difference and continue to do that, continue to make sure that we keep talking about these things, even when we are weary with our own things, or even when we are surrounded by our own things, because it's needed and it's important for us to continue talking to each other, and don't allow the situations and times of the day keep us down and burdened, silent. So I thank you all for being on the panel tonight. Thank you so much. And we never found the word, but I hope, you know, somebody will let me know what that word is, because it's not seasoned and it's not there.
Well, I think when you said elders, it is fine, because out of all of our experiences with our culture,
Mm.
all of us that are here tonight, our cultures really respect our elders, and we learn from them, and that's how we survive.
Survive, yeah. Thank you.
Personally, I like magical. Thank you.
Yes, you're all magical. Well, thank
All
you.
right, Aya.
Thank you so much, Juan.
All right, Aya. It's time to come in. Tell your little friends to go home now. Street lights are on. Time for you to come on in the house. You've been out there long enough now.
We can't see you.
That's right, because I'm inside the house. Well, I'm in the house where I got all the lights off. Time to tell your little friends over here to all go home. Now they done been on my porch long enough now. It's time for them to go in. Ladies, for real, I want to thank you all for this. This was a wonderful conversation. You comments, if you guys get a chance to go back and look at the comments, please do, because they for the most part, they didn't have questions because they were in awe of things that you were saying, and they were learning things from all of you, all five of you, including you, Aya. And so thank you so very much for this. I got to go back and look at this one again and take some notes on some things. And just to the audience out there, Torn is every week, every Thursday. We hope to keep it up every Thursday. I'm looking at Aya right now. I'm just gonna tell it. Y'all know I tell.
I'll just be honest with you. This is stressful. Like, I don't eat for like a couple of days if I have to do the hosting.
And that is amazing to me, because she does a great job. But she's just like, I don't know what to talk about, and I don't know what I'm gonna do, and I'm just sitting here like this, like a little kid in the candy store, like, oh, what's she gonna ask next? What's she gonna say next? So, again, thank you so much. Please, continue to watch, everyone watching, and ladies on this panel, please continue to watch. We're gonna make sure that the young generation hears what you're saying. Even if it means, hey, I asked y'all to come speak for some of the younger actors and stuff, because they need to know this and they need to hear this. This is very, very important. You know, so I can't say thank you enough. And y'all spent 2 hours with us. So that's even a bigger thing to do. So Joe, I read music, but yeah, I'll be in the class. Don't worry. Like me. I know you got to get off. You and Tina, you ain't got no life. It's Friday. You ain't got no job. You ain't got nothing to do.
Yes, she does.
I do. I got cardiac patients.
Oh Lord, Lord, who died now? Oh God, cardiac.
We're getting off your porch now.
Get off now. You can get off.
We have to be in
Our
before the
mamas are
street
calling
light
us.
goes
We're
off.
getting off your porch now.
Yes, get off my porch, and see y'all next week. Thank you so much, ladies. Have a wonderful evening. Everyone at home, you have a wonderful time too. All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.